Traders, because of any coming to you from theclosingprint.com on April the 25th, 2021. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the indices, big cap growth stocks, and all of our indicators which are giving us the impression we should be bullish to slightly neutral, with the US indices closing near all-time highs, with IWM closing green along with the New York Stock Exchange, and emerging markets along with international markets closing green. Sentiment has begun to get a little bit too greedy, so we would issue a word of caution as we start the week with 10 bullish indicators, 8 neutral and 2 bearish. S&P 500 closed above 4,100 support with resistance at 4,200. VIX continues to drop. And we have quite a few stocks with great setups going into this week. I added a few with ATR rising in yellow, stochastic in light blue, Bollinger Band expanding in lilac, and ADX improving in green. I've added a few scans this week, notably with so many stocks set up and ready to move higher, it would be hard to get too bearish. Bukowski's got 5 of 5 green with a CPI signal at 84.6% since April the 16th. That's bullish with 4 bearish patterns, 22 bullish patterns, and 177 patterns waiting for breakout. Starting off with the Dow Industrials, similar to all the other indices, moved lower on Monday, Tuesday, and then sideways the rest of the week, closing just off of all-time highs, with Dow component Apple reporting Wednesday after the close, trading just below all-time highs and last week's pivot high on Tuesday. RSI still rising, with investors pricing in a 4.5% move on earnings, with the stock averaging 4.3% moves in the recent quarters. Additional components from the Dow 30, we can see Goldman Sachs and banks are looking a lot better, with Microsoft just off of recent highs. Industrial stocks 3M and Raytheon also moving higher, with insurance, travelers, and United Health, both sectors doing well, followed by stocks from the payment processing group, Visa, MasterCard, Capital One, Discover, American Express, Square, all looking bullish, while these 15 stocks from the FANG group that make up more than 50% of the weight of the Qs and the NASDAQ 100 has Tesla reporting Monday, with AMD and Microsoft on Tuesday after the close, Apple, Facebook, Qualcomm, and Spotify on Wednesday. We've got NIO, Twitter, Amazon, Caterpillar, McDonald's reporting on Thursday, with ExxonMobil from the Dow 30 and Chevron moving into Friday for earnings. So while much of the focus will be on these stocks and their earnings, there are quite a few stocks set up and ready to move higher, showing relative strength coming into this week, noted in the opening monologue. In addition, the NASDAQ is trading near all-time highs. We did see the number of stocks trading above their 50-period moving average, just off the red zone at 81% to finish the week. As a result, we would issue caution on the Qs and the NASDAQ, with all of these big cap tech stocks reporting this week. The Qs are now at a 5-day outflow, the largest since 2000.com, while overall market breadth looks very good. We do have growth and value starting to move a bit higher. That said, we do have growth and value both above the 21-day and pushing the all-time highs, with small caps leading last week, trading just below all-time highs on this weekly time frame. RSI remains above 50, and all of these wicks at the lows of the week closes in the upper half of the weekly range, suggesting IWM could see more upside this week as small cap stocks show a risk on bias to the markets at the current time, as the 2,700 stocks from the NYSE continue to give us a bullish signal above the zero line, making a higher high on Friday. New York Stock Exchange advanced decline is making new highs, so breadth is improving as we trade at all-time highs. Bank of America indicators are mostly bullish, nearing extremes, with the bull-bear ratio at the top of a range. If it moves above 8, that would be a reason to start selling into strength into one of the seasonally strongest months of the year. While VIX starts off on a green signal, we look for higher highs and higher lows when this is green, lower highs and lower lows when it's red. As the front month VIX continues along a path to lower levels, mostly bullish for equities, while the ratio between the front month and the 3-month volatility index paints a slightly more bearish picture while we're trading at all-time highs. As this continues to move lower, I would start to sell more into strength, as you can see, on shorter term trading accounts, as we anticipate about a 3 to 5% drawdown sometime after May 16th. As earnings growth is accelerating into the seasonally strongest months of the year, we would expect to see something after May 15th. The bond stock ratio in the lower panel favors equities over bonds until this starts to turn, with the 65 period moving average trending lower and the bond stock ratio at lows. We'd look for any kind of extremes where we start to see this moving average and the ratio moving higher to become more safety minded in our long-term retirement accounts, confirmed by an additional view of the S&P 500 versus the long bond, the 30-year. As this rate of change indicator suggests, equities are favored over bonds since about November of last year, with the moving average and ratio suggesting the bullish trend can continue, with short-term pullbacks to be expected along the way. Confirmation comes from this group of indicators, with junk bonds, high-yield corporate debt, biotechs, IWM, and crude oil all moving higher, which is risk on in the markets, as traders of these more risky assets would vacate the markets if they thought a top was in the short term. There are caveats, of course, as we wrote about back on March 25th, when we saw that bonds were starting to change direction. We were looking for LQD to continue, a reason to get long bonds if you didn't have any exposure. Back on the 25th, we were watching higher highs and higher lows on the bond. Now that we're through the 50-period moving average, we're looking for price action to move back up to the 200-day. Over the next several weeks and months, we're looking for this safety trade to continue to work in investment-grade corporate bonds. We also see the US dollar, the fade, continuing for the last 3 weeks into a 4th week, as price action dropped back below the 200-period moving average and the 50-period moving average, threatening a trend of higher lows. If we break down through this level, expect to see appreciation in commodities like gold, copper, and crude oil, as well as the commodity index, which is threatening a 13-year downtrend. A break above this 200 level in this monthly time frame would suggest that global economies are improving, which is echoed by copper's performance, showing potential for a breakout again, as the daily chart suggests, and what we see on the monthly time frame, suggesting global economic synchronized recovery as vaccinations of the global populace becomes more ubiquitous, while gold and crude oil attempt to follow through in the most recent bullish action. Gold inside the CRB doesn't have resistance till it gets up to around 1840. Looking for higher highs and higher lows to remain persistent as RSI is above 50, showing investors are becoming increasingly more safety conscious as we proceed through earnings season over the next several weeks. All of these spider sectors moved higher last week. Even energy started to show some signs of buying near the lows. Staples pulled back to the 21-day but did find buyers, and utilities are pulling back a bit more as sectors move higher into a busy earnings week, with much of the global economy showing that synchronized recovery, the dollar fading, impacting a lot of these countries. As we can see, most of them moving higher going into this busy earnings week. Additional areas to put your money outside of U.S. markets. The CanSlim list is generated by North Coast Asset Management. For IBD, it is comprised of mostly stocks from the IBD 50, and in our case, displayed on the bottom of the charts, oversold and turning, potentially leading to a follow-through this week, with the strongest among them ranked by performance last week. Looking for stocks that start the day strong and finish the day strong, as stochastic telling us to look for closes in the upper half of the daily range when it's rising. We look for additional volume. Adient, AD&T pushing off a relatively inexpensive stock at $45 per share. Last week, following through, volume increasing, ATR climbing, stochastics rising, MACD above its signal line. Albemarle, some of you trading this one over the last few days, looking for a follow-through. RSI is above 50, price actions moving above recent pivots, and volume by price resistance levels. Volume increasing, MACD above its signal line, stochastics pointing to higher closes within the daily range, and ATR telling us to look for expanding ranges going forward. Most of the banks are looking very strong, with price action moving back above the 21-day, about to move to an area of 52-week highs. Volume increasing, MACD turning, stochastics rising, and ATR climbing as well. Most of the banks look similar, with Goldman Sachs on the most actives last week, Friday finishing higher. Volume starting to pick up again, MACD's turning, stochastics rising, ATR increasing. Stocks like WOW, Wide Open West, inexpensive, looking like it's going to continue to move back up to all-time highs. 52-week highs, RSI rising, volume increasing, showing institutions taking interest, MACD crossing, stochastics rising, and ATR starting to pick up a bit. ITW, Illinois Tool Works, rising, breaking out, RSI rising, MACD crossing, volume increasing, stochastics rising. Manitowoc, MTW, looks like it wants to break out of this flat base. Moves above this pivot high, RSI is rising, volume increasing, MACD turning and crossing last week. Stochastics rising and ATR increasing, telling us to look for expanding ranges going forward. NIO and the EV markets are starting to look a little better. We got Tesla reporting earnings on Monday. Looking for a follow-through off of the 200-day moving average last week. We're back above the 9 and 21-day, 50 days overhead, RSI is rising. Volume showing institutions have been picking up shares. Stochastics are moving higher and MACD is trending. Watching for ATR to turn up as well. Buckle showed up on an ADX scan that looks for stocks starting a new trend. Looks like this is starting to push higher. RSI rising. Volume starting to pick up again. 3 weeks ago we saw this volume going into the first week of April. Thinking about price action at 40, where all that volume came in, do you think institutions are in this for just $3? Or do you think this is going to continue higher? I think the latter. Stochastics turning up, MACD crossing, and ATR is starting to show expanding ranges in the forecast. Emerging markets moved higher last week, gapping up. This Direxion bullish 3 times shares asset looks like it's going to continue higher. Look for a follow through and a push up to all-time highs. Volume picked up on Friday. It's a little thin. That's the only caveat. MACD's above its signal line and stochastics rising. You could also just check out IEMG. Emerging markets look pretty strong. Looking for that gap up to continue and for prices to reach 52-week highs over the next several weeks. Volume starting to pick up. Could see a little bit more of that. While the emerging markets and individual countries continue higher thanks to a fade in the US dollar. EWZ, we're looking forward to get to all-time highs again, 52-week highs. More of a long-term swing position as volume continues to show institutions have been picking up shares. LPL Financial Holdings, LPLA, pushing higher. Looks like it's going to break out. RSI's rising, moving into an area of very little overhead supply. Volume picking up, MACD's turning, stochastics rising, and ATR is starting to increase, telling us to look for larger ranges, expanding price action. Fiserv showing up on several different scans from Investors Business Daily. This is pushing higher above the 9 and 21 day RSI rising, volume starting to pick up. Stochastics turned higher and ATR is picking up. Seagate was stronger, backed by its earnings report last week. Volume showing institutions were picking up shares going into earnings. Looking for a follow through, maybe a flag for a better entry. ATR turning up as intraday ranges begin to expand. MACD and stochastics rising. RSI showing muscle like it did over here back in December along with ATR. Stocks from the IBD rising, profit estimates. Scan looking good. Most of these fit the criteria for a follow through. Make sure you check out the opening monologue. Those stocks in green are from the rising profit estimates that look good, that fit our criteria. With the retail stocks like Williams-Sonoma looking very strong. At the 21 day, this had a nice run, a gap and go. Draw a trend line through this area. That's your stop below 168 or so. Looking for a follow through. Look at stochastic. ATR is starting to turn. MACD is starting to turn. Volume starting to pick up again. Yeti on previous scans and watch lists, we saw this breakout at 77.50, 78, continues to push higher. Volume picked up. Stochastics, MACD trending higher along with ATR. Yeti scheduled to report May 13th before the open. Stocks from IBD's relative strength closing at all-time highs, 52-week highs. This list is some interesting candidates. IQV, one of those names. Gap and go. Look at the volume. That's institutions picking up shares. ATR climbing. Look for a flag or a breakout. Draw your trend line through the closes of this gap and go for your stop. Look for a follow through, as institutions obviously like what they heard on April 22nd when it reported earnings, a big beat. Looking for the follow through. We also noted stocks that closed near all-time highs like ASML. These are 5-minute charts above VWAP. With the markets pulled back some 15 handles at the end of the day, Friday, looking at the stocks that held up the best, like Cleveland Cliffs, Charles Schwab, DQ, Floor & Decor, and Hubs. That was an article that I wrote on Friday. Looking for a follow through. We got the follow through. The third white soldier breaking out of price action. Consolidation. Looking for a follow through this week. Maybe a flag. Plus $30 on Friday. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Viddy coming to you from theclosingprint.com with your weekend video newsletter for April 25th, 2021. Make sure you check out these names. I can't possibly go through all of these stocks, but they all fit the same criteria. Price above the 9/21 day in most cases. MACD rising, ATR rising. Maybe Bollinger Bands are opening up like we see here in Lilac. These 7 stocks look good. Looking for the follow through. Otherwise, I hope this helps. We'll send out a watch list later tonight around 11:30, 12 o'clock midnight on the East Coast, 8:30, 9 o'clock on the West Coast. Be sure to check your inbox for that. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of it. We'll talk to you on Monday. Take care.